Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is a show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. It's been an interesting last couple of weeks. We had Rocktober, getting ready for WizKids Opens, trying to get stuff, taken care of when it comes to playing heroclix and. Realistically, also, not burning myself out on stuff either, and that's actually a pretty big deal. I'm trying to take a little bit more time for myself, personal life stuff, and also, I end up making a decision for my team, which. At first, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But now I realize, wow, okay, cool. I can handle this. And so, as of right now, I'm sort of glad to, well, not sort of, I am. I'm glad to announce the new members to Phoenix Nest that we were able to pick up. And also a shout out to everybody on the team that's stepping up to help the new members. So we have Gerard Buffington. He did really well at Rock World Cup. I think he made top 16. Then we have John Scooter Robinson. He won the Blow Your Face Off tournament in Atlanta. We also have Lucas Tom Van Hollen. He is on the team. He won Nebraska States and I think South Dakota States. I think he won another states too. Isaac, I forgot Isaac's last name. Not 4 Points Isaac. Not 4 Points Isaac. Tom Lytle and Austin Lytle. And so those are the 6 new members on, and then we also inducted some people on to sort of just help from an organizational standpoint, primarily like team building and also just like I hate to say it like this, we have a person in particular, their whole role is just to remind us of the basic stuff and really come back and say like, hey, is this really going the way that we think it is? So there's a lot that's going down, and I'm really happy with the way that things are going so far, and getting everyone on board with the training process. So like, as it stands for myself personally, you might be asking, like, Dark Logos, you said you were chilling, and then you have, like, 8 new people on your team. So how are you, trying to chill more? And it mainly comes in is that, you have to end up trusting your other teammates to handle things. And I'm one of those people where it's real easy for me to just be like, yep, and I do everything. And I take on the load or else it won't get done. And everything needs to be done because it has my name on it. And then when you realize that, other people have to be invested. It's not just like your name, it's, our name. And the importance of the our name factor, and having, a degree of ownership of your actions and also your contributions. So that sort of leads in part into today's show, and the best that I could call this show is preparing for tomorrow. That's the best thing I call the show is preparing for tomorrow, and I'll start it off with a story that happened to one of my teammates. I laugh about it because I'm like, yeah, this has happened before. It'll happen again. But it also sort of shows me a misconception people can have about what being competitive means now versus what being competitive was. So anyway, I have a teammate that will go unnamed so that this story doesn't become infamous, who ended up working with one of our new team builders. He's a guy, my first student, Tom, I mentioned a long time ago. Well, actually, I mentioned Tom a bunch of times on this show, so shout outs to Tom. But Tom built a team for one of my helped build a team for one of my teammates. And, my teammate went to a local tournament and proceeded to do really well with that team. And so what ends up happening is, he reports back to Tom and, he says like, yo, this is what happened, blah, 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 yakety smackety, all that other good jazz. And I really don't care, because I look at, if my player's developing and changing, as long as we know what we're trying to do, locals are fair game. And everybody knows my opinion on this. Like, you're playing to get a $5 man. Like a $5 plastic little figure. It's not con exclusives. It's not like super rare ID cards. It's not chases. You're just playing for little plastic dudes. So, anyway, later on, I don't even know if it's a day later or if it's that night or whatever, but within a short period of time, there's a Facebook post about the interaction by one of the gentlemen in which my colleague beat, and saying, pretty much along the lines of, how disgraceful it is for a person to use somebody else's build. You should be, making your own build for a local tournament, and if, certain things don't go down, I'm not showing up. And in the midst of all this person said, I consider myself both a casual and competitive person, and who is able to play in both worlds. And that's really where I started thinking, and I started listening to several different like podcasts, and in particular, I listened to this guy named Eric Thompson. He's called the Hip Hop Preacher. He has a PhD. I've forgotten what. But anyway, he ends up, bringing up some realities that people will make excuses to justify their yesterdays. People will make excuses to justify their yesterdays. And that he would always start off like his Motivational Tuesday, like, yo, this is your day. There is no other day like today. There is no day like this one. This is your opportunity to, start that thing, to go forward and do that thing. And so when I looked at this incident, I looked at a person who wants to be able to play relaxed, but also feel that they have a grasp of the game, to be competitive. And where I would sort of stand now, I would say that's an illusion. It's an illusion to think that if you're not competing in Rock, if you're not competing in WizKids Open, that you can be competitive and casual. And the main reason why I say that is, if you're not on your podcast game, if you're listening to me, you are. If you're not on, your Facebook, in a good Facebook group that talks about heroclix, not just like, oh my gosh, did you see it? the prize support Banshee. Like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest. And I team it up with my prize support brother Voodoo, and then it's the greatest X-Men team. Not X-Men team, greatest team I can get, because now I can use probability control, and now I also can use Banshee's cool little psychic blast. It's cheap. It's under 150 points. You could tell how much disdain I have for those two pieces, as much as I love the original two figures that they're based off of. Anyway, but if you're not studying, if you're not looking at your local venue as a place where you can experiment, plus breakout stuff for you to be more proficient at, if your environment is not cultivating you to get better, and I hate to say, for this cat, like, you got, two highly placed individuals that have done really well this last year in your venue, and all of a sudden you get mad that one of them brings something hardcore. Okay, so there's a disconnect. And if you would say, what would it make me to be competitive 8 years ago? Read Realms. All you had to do 8 years ago is read Realms. This is like right after, 10th anniversary. There hasn't been too many things popping off. I mean, let's go back further. Okay. Actually, no. Yeah, because it's this is 10-year anniversary. I'm sorry. There's too many anniversaries for me to think of. Because hold on, wait. Because we're on 15. We're on 15 and a 15-year anniversary. I'm like, I know it's 15-year anniversary. Come on, Edward. Get up with it. Don't be an old man yet. Yeah. So, like, I'll take you back. Let's go back 10 years. Okay? If we go back 10 years, being competitive is just reading Realms. Like, you're not even looking at the WizKids site. All right? You're in the strategy and tactics forum. You're making your comments. You're using the unit section to make your teams. If you're really, really in the know, you're a judge and you're on the judges forum. And you're there for arbitration on all the most hugest, dramatous things. And I did, a bonicize right there. The hugest, dramatous things that happened in the game of heroclix happened on the judges forum. Minus like the trolling on Realms, like, oh my gosh, this guy's a douchebag, blah blah blah. That doesn't go away. That's sort of perpetually. That's just Realms. I'm not going to front. That's just Realms. But to beat the average player just required you to just be abreast on what's going on. There weren't that many tournaments. The development of new stuff came out because there was more time in between sets, so there was more time to play with things. And realistically, the best thing that you could say is, with three sets, maybe 4 sets if you got lucky in a year, you had time to sit back and play a theme team, maybe play several theme teams that were in a set, or play with some older figures, and the game was a lot less demanding. Real talk. Like, way less demanding. Even with feat cards and all the other silliness that is going on, the game wasn't that demanding 10 years ago. Okay? You could look at Wizard World, build that team, And then in a matter of, maybe a couple of months, we will figure out something. And then after you figure out that something, then you figure out something else on top of the other thing. And then you start playing, 500-point teams. And then, your local area starts taking over and it does its own thing. And so there really wasn't that many huge prizes to fight over. There were some, like Protected, and a few others. But other than that, there weren't a lot of things that made you go, oh my gosh, I have to crush the next guy next to me. Because if I don't, I will have to pay $30 on eBay for this prize support figure. Okay, there's nothing like that. All right, that's what it takes to be competitive. Now you fast forward, and you get at the beginning of Rock, and you see a lot of homebrew. You see a lot of wacky racer stuff. You see, some Scooby-Doo mysteries in there too. Like, I would have gotten away from, with it if it wasn't for, your pesky M10 Iron Man. There's some cool stuff that pops up, and you can say like, man, I really respect this cat because he played blank, or okay, I'm getting tired of M10 Iron Man, but look, this dude played M10 Thor. Okay, with a mystical team. Oh, okay, that's, it's a little bit different. Oh, okay, Silver Centurion here. Oh, okay, Iron Pharaoh. Oh, okay, this, that, and the other. There was some creativity that was allowed to be had. But what did you need to be competitive? A good venue. And know the rules. So let's look at what happened. We have an elevation. Like, just reading realms wasn't enough. You had to have a good venue and know the rules. We've had heroclix teams, but it's not like what we have now. The heroclix teams of yesteryear are just primarily cats in the same venue. Minus, a close group of friends, like 4 points. But some of the older, teams or organizations or whatever you want to call them were just cats in a venue. That's it. So you look at that and you look at the exceptional individuals that, appeared and how did they appear and why did they do well? Well, primarily they did well because they were either highly intelligent, were able to figure out how to maximize and exploit the rules, or they had a venue that allowed them to test and test and test, and that was a positive thing until they were able to refine down what were the best figures to play and what were the best options to play. So there, when you look at some of your first few world champions, that's what they're dealing with, and I'm talking about under current NECA. When you look at Daniel Jones, if you look at George Masu, you look at Alex Avila, they're in groups, they're play testing, and their local play group is supportive. They know really well. If you talk about former U.S. champ Adam Freeman, Ross Udis, both of those guys pretty much really good at exploiting the rules, and really good at knowing where there are loopholes and where there are not. Okay, so you take all of that together and you start to see like, okay, this is what it means to be competitive. Is that I need to understand some tricks here and there, understand the rules, maybe have a friend that's in one of these secret heroclix groups that knows all the dirty secrets and is able to maybe drop me a nugget of what's possibly going to happen at Origins, so that I can get some con exclusives there, and then when I go to Gen Con, I can get some, get the rest of the con exclusives or something like that. So being a good player, 5-6 years ago, not even 10, about 5-6 years ago, isn't even that hard. It's harder than it was 10 years ago. But it's not that hard. It requires you to, make friends. And, start looking at select groups of people and being a little bit more questioning on the language. Get whiz kids in their little mishaps. Because they do a lot of them. They still do, but yeah. Okay. So then you fast forward and you start seeing, well, here's Majestics. And Majestics actually begins what I like to call the modern team era. The modern team era. Where you have a group of exceptional individuals that get together and just say, screw it, we're going to make a run at this. And the person that you have to thank for all of this is George Massue. Thank George Massue. And if you love or hate the current team environment, go thank George Massue. And you might say, like, why would you go thank George Massue? I forgot if it was on, it wouldn't have been Push to Regen. It was either Glass Cabinet. It had to be Glass Cabinet Films. He pretty much called out the West Coast and said that the East Coast had all the winners because the last 3 world champions were from the East Coast. I mean, that's hard to dispute. Even if you talk about Kenny Pena being a U.S. national champ plus Canadian national champ, when you break it down, a majority of the titles before Majestics were held by people on the East Coast. Okay, and there were more events on the East Coast, like what was it? It's not Clicks for the Cure. No, yeah, Clicks for the Cure, hosted by Norm on the East Coast. So when you come back to it, you have the prodding and the sort of the heel in wrestling terms challenge from George Massue from the West Coast to do something, and you get Majestics. Okay, and so we have the introduction of the team format for heroclix, and so that does nothing more but solidify the team concept. Okay. So you fast forward a little bit, you see, after, Majestics comes in with their shirts, kicking butt, you start to see other teams pop up in response to the Majestics model. All right. So what did you have to do at that period of time? Did you have to be a good player? Did you have to be on a team? No. You just needed to know the rules and go to events. And that's where it gets more complicated, because now it's like I need to know the rules, I need to have somebody on the end, and on top of everything else, I need to go to events. And that's what makes me competitive now. That's what allows me to actually compete. Maybe not super well, but at least, I'm maybe 500. Maybe I'm 500. I might not be batting 1,000, but I'm at least 500. I might be 750 and break and then lose in out rounds, the first round of out rounds. You're doing better than most people, Okay, so that's what it requires to be competitive. You need to start going to a couple of events. And I literally mean a couple of events. 1 or 2 events, you're good. You go to, you can go to Norm's event, you can go to Majestics 1K, you can go to maybe 1 or 2 rock events. You didn't even have to go to Rocktober, because that was at Dragon Con, starting off. Okay, which Scott Crampton was like the king of while it was still at Dragon Con. Okay, so taking steps back, and you start, looking around. You have a lot of people that says, like, I'm good at heroclix, I'm competitive here at heroclix. But really, are you competitive? Locally competitive? Yes. But when you start bringing in that national and global scope, and I even got into the global elements that's gotten introduced into the game. Shout out to Tiago. Okay. When you look at that, I hate to say it, like the globalism effect is in play. The whole, you're not just competing in the U.S. You're not looking at your skill set just in the U.S. You're looking at Canada. You're looking at South America. You're looking at UK. You're looking at Africa. It's not just, oh, I'm competitive. It's like, no, son, like, you're local. You show up. You're not competitive. Because if you're competitive, that's what you're competing against. That's what you're competing against now. But even then, if you say, like, on a national level, what you're competing against is on a national level. Okay? So when we see the expansion of teams, we see Ragnarok come in, we see Bluegrass Guardians of the Galaxy, which eventually morphs into Clickstuff. You see Pusheen come up a lot stronger with some of their players. You start to see Agents of the ICT. You see Juggernaut. Clicksmen. And I know I'm forgetting teams, but like there's a lot of teams. There's a lot of minor teams for a while. But when you're seeing this arrival of people reacting to the Majestics formula, then what do you do? If you are by yourself and you're going to say, like, yeah, I'm competitive. I'm like, homie, are you competitive? Are you Phil Isaacson? Like, are you that exceptional of an individual? Okay, are you Jake Williams? And even Jake Williams technically was with Team Illuminati. All right. So when everything is said and done, the introduction of Majestics made everyone form tribes. You saw everyone form tribes. And you see people at the forefront of these teams that, lead these teams. And, I forgot Rubicon, of course. Freaking Rubicon. How could I forget? And 4 Points and all that. But you start seeing people form tribes, and not just any tribes. Tribes that are there to challenge the reigning champs. Then you have, the emergence of Failboat to challenge Majestics from a team perspective. And when you look back at it, you start to ask yourself, realistic questions. And the first realistic question is, can I do this by myself? And Phil Isaacson, for a good 2 years, I would say, proved that you can do it by yourself. But not necessarily an insult to anybody else, but talk to Phil Isaacson. Look at some of his articles that he's put up in the past. Look at all of the things that he's sort of contributed and broken down. And if you're not thinking on that level, you're not an exceptional individual. And that's okay. That's okay. Look at Adam Friedman. Pay for Majestic CCG. Read an Adam Friedman article. Are you thinking on that level? No, you are not an exceptional individual. I'm not saying that you agree with them. But if you can't break down the complexities of why this and not that, and pretty much give me a full PhD thesis on it, you're not an exceptional individual. That's fine. Okay? So now what we're seeing is the compensation for not being an exceptional individual, being the tribe. And the tribe's collective knowledge, collective skill set, overthrew the exceptional individual. Now, the only anomaly in the tribe standpoints is 4 Points Gaming, because you had 3 to 4 exceptional individuals come together and make a team. Okay, so that in and of itself is the anomaly when you deal with exceptional individualism. Everybody else has gone through some sort of like natural, growth process, whether it be organic, coming out of a venue, or a group of friends, or to something like Phoenix Nest, where like I recruit and train you. There is a process in which that person has grown to be a contender. Okay. So now we're seeing, probably about two years ago, being competitive is being on a team. Being competitive is being in a community that cultivates one another. If your team is, hey, we're team locals, you're on a team. We're going to travel. We're going to, at least try to go to 1 or 2 WKOs a year. You're a team. We're going to try to send, one person to Origin so we can get them con exclusives. That's a team member. Like, people think it's freaking rocket science to make a team. I'm like, no, it's not. It's real simple. But if you still think that you're an exceptional individual that's able to do all this stuff, and you're Lone Ranger out there with no Tonto, okay. There's only so much that you yourself can process. So you keep fast forwarding, and you're seeing a stacking of going to locals, being aware of the rules, being on a team, listening, and I would really definitely say within the last 2 years, is if you're not listening to HeroClix podcasting, you're done. You're done. I see this. I see this in real time. I know people that listen to HeroClix podcasting, and I know people that don't listen to HeroClix podcasting. And the people that don't listen to HeroClix podcasting are 2 to 4 months behind the tech. Whether they I figured this out. You're 2 to 4 months behind. Now, this isn't how I'm like, now listen to this isn't how I come back to you and say, listen to more Starting Over podcast and listen to more Quarry. No, not really. I can't come back and say, like, listen to more Starting Over podcast, even though I appreciate you here. I don't get paid from it anymore. This is more of me loving this than getting paid for it. Okay. So you look at all this, and you're like, all right, am I still competitive? Then you look at really the downfall of Realms, because Realms is trash for learning tactics outside of maybe the rules conversations. Occasionally someone drops a little nugget here or there, but functionally everybody's on Facebook. No, hardly anybody's on Realms that is actually good, talking about good tactics on Realms. You might get an article here and there. But if you're going to talk about the global meta and the emergence of global competition, you have to go to Majestics. And Tiago is definitely one of the brightest minds and most creative minds in the international scene. Then you have Jason Collins. You also have Jay Solomon. You know, so you now not only just have Americans contributing to the thought process of the game, you now have people outside of America contributing to the thought process of the game. Man, show me the dude from South America, or not South America, from South Africa, doing a podcast on heroclix. I'll have him on Starting Over Podcast in a hot second. You know, someone from Southern Africa, man. You know, you do a podcast, let me know. We'll get it set up on a Saturday, where I'll come in and interview you over Skype and point people to your show. Because I listen to all sorts of things, you know, all over the internet. And truth be told, like, I'm really afraid of South Americans sometimes. I'm really afraid of them. And this sounds mean, but I don't want them to have access to a lot of stuff, because whenever they don't have access to a lot of stuff, they create things that scare me of how legit it is. They create so many things that scare me, like, oh really? I thought those figures were trash. You showed me, man. You showed my arrogant American butt that has covered his weakness through money. You know, what having limited resources forces you to play. Oh gosh, I thought I was awesome. You have shown me that y'all are way better. So now again, we're coming back. So what does it mean to be competitive? So what does it mean to be competitive, and who are you competing against? And I would say right now is, unfortunately, if someone was going to say, I'm able to be competitive and casual, all that means is, when it comes to casual games, I tone it down. That's it. Because you can't be competitive and not aware of the massive amount of data that you have to take in to be competitive. You can't. Like, if you try to say otherwise, you're delusional or lying. Because if I take a person from South Africa, and then I'm able to resolve the travel and the stuff issue, and they're on a team, and they're on top of the rules, and they're in a good Facebook group, and they're talking with other individuals, and they practice and they play test, and I take them against an average casual American who says, oh, look, I'm casual and competitive, the dude from South Africa would wax the American. Like freaking Danielson style. Okay? So hard. Why is that? Because without all this work put in, you can't compete. You can't. You can lie to yourself and say I'm doing well. That means I'm competitive. But realistically, you're not. On a global scale, you're not. On a local scale, you might be coming close. On a global scale, you're not. And that's who realistically you're competing against now. And I think the sort of the wake-up call to that for me was the first year I placed in teams. We made top 4, and one of the teams the team that got third place was from South America, and they wore their luchador masks. And I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's a statement. That's a statement that Americans aren't going to hold the throne. Okay, and even in America, like, the East Coast fought the West Coast and the West Coast won. And then in the meantime, the central, the central grouping in the South said, "Oh, son, we're in this too. Like we got this homebrew for you. We got some good players around here. We got something for you. Don't get it twisted. We are coming." Like Daniel Powell winning is a good indication of that. That the heroclix meta scene is not necessarily just it's not dominated by either coast. The major thought processes come from the Midwest and the South. Like, real talk. If you look at the majority of minds that people listen to, go and tally up the regions, and you'll see that the Midwest and the South might be tied. Then it's the West Coast, then it's the East Coast. And that's not me trying to start stuff, okay? That's not me trying to start beef or start a new war or be like, Central U.S. And I'm doing the Jericho, Y2J like stuff. I'm not doing that. And that also lets you know how long ago I actually watched wrestling. Just saying. But you start to see, like, yeah, you can't be competitive if you're not in a group, and you can't be competitive if you're not on top of the stuff. And the thought processes of how the game is played has rotated, several different times. Again, 10 years ago, East Coast dominated the meta. There was no question. There was no way for anybody else to come close to touching the East Coast. Okay? And then, you fast forward and you see the West Coast challenge, and then you see, the people from the Centrals come up. And you see, this year, I hate to sort of say it, it's like, look, like the South is the most dominant region. You have Matty G, who's in Tennessee. You have Easton Brock and Howard Brock, which are in Alabama. And I forgot who was in fourth place. I think he's from the East Coast. I can't recall from Origins. And then when you look at Rocktober, I mean, most of the people are in the Midwest or the South. There aren't any really West Coast people there or East Coast people there outside of Kenny. So, like, what are we going to say then? Again, I'm not starting drama. Okay, so going back is what does it mean to be a competitive player? And right now, I hate to say, if you're not putting in the work, you're really not competitive, unless you're measuring yourself against those people around you. And if you are, it's like when Galactus shows up. If Galactus shows up, it's a big deal. It doesn't matter if from Dragon Ball Z, if you're Hercule and you're the best of the humans, it doesn't matter. Freaking Cell shows up. Freaking Super Saiyan, level 3 shows up. Hell, Piccolo shows up. You're a joke. Hercule is a joke in comparison. But can you really say Hercule competes against Goku? Hercule really can't compete against Piccolo. Hell, Hercule can't beat Krillin. Okay? Hercule can't even beat Krillin. Okay? So, when we're being honest, a lot of the time it's just pride that says, like, yes, I could hang there. I can be super competitive if I wanted to. I could go in there and just stomp everybody. Like, nah, man. You can't. You just want us to believe that. You want us to think that. Because your pride mandates for you to think that. And that's one thing that I've had to like check myself on. Is, you know, when I started the realm into being competitive or more competitive, and seeing what the higher realms of competitive was, it forced me to let go of a lot of pride. First was my pride of saying, like, I was able to forecast, because my forecasting back in the day was horrible. It's a bit better now, but, you know, I still get things wrong, a la Unimind. Egg on my face on that one. Won't front. Love Jakeem too much. Blinded by the wonderful genie light. Okay? But it you know, my forecasting got better after going into competitive realms. Having better people to talk to, better sample size of people to talk to outside of my local area helped me a lot. Getting trained and humbling myself, you know, behind 3 really good players helped me a lot. Okay? It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm competitive. There you go, because I say I am. Like, what are you doing to take steps to become competitive? What are you doing to take steps to become better? You know, this is your day. This is your day to take your step and say, like, I'm moving towards being the world champion. This is my day. I'm going to go and I'm going to, you know, sit through rounds and read through text and take notes. This is your day. You can go in and, you know, try to strike up Facebook conversations, you know, with people that did really well. You know, this is your day. You can take time and work on your placement. This is your day. You can take time and work on your understanding of maps and tactics that works around maps. This is your day. Try to find something, you know, useful and different and creative with the pieces that you have, and play pieces that you don't have. This is your day. And if you don't have a heroclix notebook, get one. Write your teams down. Start there. Look at your weaknesses. Have somebody else look at your team. Be open to honest critique. You know, I finished playtesting with a teammate of mine this evening with his team. And I'm not going to talk about his team because we're about to play it. And you know what? He beat me. And I could say, like, hey, man, you're doing this, this, and this. But, yeah, you won this game. Why did you do this other thing? And he told me, and I'm like, all right, I get it. Okay, I just want to make sure that you're not wasting your energy, or that you don't have, you know, idle points. You know, because at the end of the day, I'm like, look, dude, we're going to the same tournament. It's going to be you and me in the finals, or you know, you and another person in the finals, or me and another person in the finals. But we're going to go in there and kill it. Because we're competitive. You know, you need information, I'll help you with information. You need a practice partner, I'll help you with I'll practice with you. You know, oh, you got some intel? Thank you very much on that intel. And I think that's the thing. Like, it's easy to say that you're competitive, and it's easy to say that you're undefeated if you never step in the ring. It's easy to say, like, yeah, I could be there, when you don't even, you know, strap up your shoes. And that's the thing I find frustrating. And there's nothing wrong being casual. Please don't get it twisted. I don't have anything against people being casual. Okay? But when you understand what the cost it means to be competitive, if you can't pay that cost, fine. You're not a less of a human being. You're not a less of a man or a woman. Okay? Or young boy, young girl. Whatever. For all those dogs out there too, and you're not less of a dog either. Somebody sent me a picture with their pet, so I'm just saying. You're not less of a dog there, Snoopy. But, you know, when I like I said, you could take your steps for development. But when you start looking at the evolution of the teams, you look at the evolution of competition, it's completely changed. And I didn't even say, like, hey, man, you're putting in, 20 hours a week in practice. And in some people it might be, 10. Some people it might be 5. One former Wizard World champion, I read his article. He said he practiced for a month straight every day, about 5 to 8 hours a day. So that means that dude got up, thought about his team, practiced his team, went to work, did his job, came home, ate, practiced his team again, got some little bit of sleep, and then started the process all over again. And then he became a Wizard World champion. That was his process. I know when I heard that, and it still resonates with me. When I heard that, I was like, that's what it takes to win. I need to do that. And whenever I don't come close to doing that, I'm like, yeah, I didn't do what it takes to win. I wasn't being competitive. I was resting on my laurels. I was being lazy. I was, riding the inertia of past victories. Okay? I need to get in the ring and practice. I need to slug it out. I got 12 people I can call. There's no excuse for me not to get some practice in. And I'm not just talking to my teammates. I could probably go through my phone and be like, yo, you want to practice? Yo, this other person, you want to practice? Yo, this person, hey, you doing WKOs? You want to practice? There's no excuse. It's easy to call out others. It's easy to make fun of others. It's easy to say, woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, back again. But if you don't take that time day by day to get better, if you don't take that time to study the elements that make you fail, if you don't take that time to understand, this is my skill set, this is what I'm working with, you can't be competitive. So, I know that sounds frustrating. I know it sounds like I just shot down a bunch of viewers. But just because you're competitive now does not mean that you can't be competitive tomorrow. But you have to take those steps in understanding what it takes to be competitive and win. And I'm not saying, and I want to make it clear, because some people have a misunderstanding, is I'm competitive because I showed up. No. You're competitive when you're able to fight. Could you not fight back? Then where is the competition? That's a slaughter. There's a difference between a competition and a slaughter. If you're getting slaughtered, go play casual until you decide to be competitive. If you decide not to, decide to stay being competitive, do what it takes to be competitive. But don't be a freaking dink and then when it's casual night, bring Unimind. Don't do that. That just stirs the pot, causes problems. You're losing allies, people that are going to be willing to let you borrow figures and help you and give you different insights. Don't be that dude, okay? So, anyway, that's today's show, and I know it's it's one of those like get motivated, get hyped type episodes, and the main reason I did this is everybody's talking about Unimind. And I've talked about Unimind. And everybody's like, nerf Unimind. And I'm sort of down with nerfing Unimind. But at the same time, there's only so much of that you're going to actually want to hear. Like, I had my conversation in Rocktober. And I even asked, I think, Jay Solomon, it's like, how much of the current problems in heroclix realistically is our own fault? And I mean our own is like us, the podcasters, because a lot of the lack of diversity just comes in because of the synthesis. Like, I know other podcasters listen to my show because we talk. I listen to their shows. We talk. I'll leave comments on Metal Lab or 2 Clicks for KO, I will, listen to Clickstuff. I listen to a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Okay. And I'll send little comments here and there to people on the shows that I know and be like, yo, I like this. I have a question on that, blah, blah, blah. And we'll talk. But we all listen to each other. And it narrows our opinion. And so we're presenting those opinions, and you're getting that information. And so then, again, your information is being reinforced by this narrowing of opinions. And then the results come out, and the results reflect the opinions. And so then we come back and we say, like, hey, here's the results. And so based on the results, here are our opinions again, and it narrows down again. And I think that's bad. And I think part of that comes down to one of the main reasons I think a lot of people like PJ is that PJ challenges the concept that standard is the only way, and the counter meta is the only reaction. And PJ plays sideways. And I respect him for it. I beyond respect him for it, because it gives a different insight that you're forced to tackle the problems in different ways. So I'm and part of me sort of saying taking a break. I'm going to try to put up a show between now and the beginning of the year. Shows are going to come up, just maybe not regularly. They're going to be a little bit more sporadic. So I'm like, fair warning, through November, December, and beginning of January, you're going to get shows. You may get weekly shows. I may miss a week here and there. But I am sort of chilling, because the only thing that's left is WKOs, and they're not going to put Unimind on the watch list before the WKOs. Like, real talk. They're probably not even going to present a watch list until January, maybe even February. And even then, if they put it on the watch list, it's going to be like a week and a half. Then they're going to deliberate, do what they're going to do, and then we'll deal with Unimind being nerfed or whoever else is on the chopping block, because maybe something's broken from, Harley Quinn set. Who knows? So, but I want to make sure that, like you all know, that I'm not just abandoning everything. I'm not quitting the heroclix, but I am sort of like chilling. I'm not being as competitive. I'm running a competitive team. But my WKO team, I know from my own perspective, probably is not going to win it. More than likely, it's probably not going to win it. But that's mainly because I went through October. So I also told my teammates this before we did the recruiting. It's like, between what I do for team development in the quarry and starting over a podcast, like, I haven't had a break in like 2 years. And I blame WizKids, but I can't fault WizKids, because they took the earliest opportunity they could for having a qualification tournament for nationals. And I respect them for not putting it in September or October. But having it in November just extends the season just a tad too much. Because if you think about it, you have half of November, December, and the beginning of January. So you have about 2 months to sort of just decompress, joke around, catch up, and play all those wacky theme teams that you wanted to play, and all those fun scenarios before, early February, where you're back at the grind for getting, rock points or whatever else. So, anyway, so this is just the inside of what's going on. You can follow me on Twitter. It came from outer space and told me the real haunt is on planet J689, where the people there turn into ectoplasmic goo and morph into the the weird and warped divisions of signals sent from Earth throughout the cosmos. Yeah, that's some really bad TV they have out there. So you can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com if you wish to opine. Keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. Let me know what you think of where WizKids go to make the game a little bit better. Definitely, I know you would say like Nerf Unimind, but anything else other than Nerf Unimind. Also, you can you can support the podcast through buying a shirt on the link below. And if you would like to donate to the show, it's at startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. Everything that you donate will go towards making the show better. All right. I'd like to thank you all for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.